The IMM 5373E is the Sponsorship Undertaking and Settlement Plan form that is used by sponsorship agreement holders. This video tutorial is specifically geared towards how to complete this form for sponsorship agreement holders who are following Risk Management Plan A. When you open up the form, you know that you are opening the fillable version of the form because you can see these buttons at the top: Save, Reset, and Print Form. As you go along completing this form, if you need to stop midway through filling in the information, you can click on the Save button, which will save it to your computer, and you can reopen it again at another time. So to begin with, you'll need to check this box here if you're doing a blended visa office referred program sponsorship, and if you're not, you will leave it blank. If you are doing a sponsorship in connection with the Rainbow Refugee Assistance Partnership, then you would check this box here. When you check the box for the blended visa office referred sponsorship, you have additional information to include, such as the profile number for that BVOR sponsorship. If you've made a mistake by checking one of these boxes, you can undo your selection. Or if you don't want to see this undo selection, you can click on the button to reset the form. So moving on to section A, the sponsor information. This is where you will fill in information about your organization. So the first line, you're going to fill in the legal name of your sponsorship agreement holder organization. This would be the name that was placed into the SAW agreement that you had signed. Next, you will include the address information, so the number and street, city, province, postal code for where the sponsorship agreement holder's main office is located. You will also include the primary telephone number that is used for your sponsorship agreement holder organization's sponsorship program. You will also include the primary email address that is used by your SAW for correspondence with IRCC. You also include the name of the SAHs signing authority, the person who can act on behalf of the organization and bind them to this contract, this undertaking form. Now, the SAW signing authority had to have been identified to IRCC, and that name is kept on file with IRCC. So this would need to be someone who IRCC is aware of, that you have authorized to be a signing authority for your SAW. Next, when you scroll down, you're going to find information about constituent groups or co-sponsors you may have. If you don't work with a constituent group or a co-sponsor, you can select no for do you have a constituent group or do you have a co-sponsor, and then continue on filling in the rest of the form. However, if you do have a constituent group, you would select yes, and some additional information will be required from you about the organization. So the name of the constituent group will need to be inserted, as well as the authorized signing authority, again, the person who has the authority to bind that organization to a contract. You would provide their information here, as well as their date of birth and the address information for where that constituent group organization is located. You would also need to include the telephone number and email address for that constituent group that is used in connection with the private sponsorship that they are going to be undertaking. Next, we will choose yes if you do have a co-sponsor, and co-sponsors can take the form of two different types. You would select which type of sponsor you are working with. It is a co-sponsoring individual or a co-sponsoring organization. Now, if you had selected at the top that you are undertaking a Rainbow Refugee partnership, then you would need to select Rainbow Refugee Partnership Organization. In this case, we're going to select the type of sponsor as a co-sponsoring individual. When it's a co-sponsoring individual, you would need to include their family name and given name, their date of birth, as well as their unique client identification number if they had had any interactions, applications with IRCC previously. They would know if they have a unique client identification number, a UCI number. You would also include any information about the relationship to the principal applicant. So if they are family members of the principal applicant, you would indicate how they are related. We also need to know the address information, apartment or unit number, city, province, and postal code, their home telephone number, if they have a cell telephone number, as well as their email address. Now, if you include more than one co-sponsor, you will need to ensure that each of those co-sponsors has separate email addresses. You can't use the same email address for the co-sponsors, and you can't use the same email address as the constituent group if you also have a constituent group. Now, if you have a co-sponsoring organization, this is what you can expect to see. You will need to provide the name of the co-sponsoring organization, so their legal name, as well as the name of their signing authority and that signing authority's date of birth. You also include the unique client identification number for that signing authority or organization if they had had any applications submitted with IRCC previously. And you would also need to indicate the relationship to the principal applicant if it's applicable. This organization may have no relationship to the principal applicant, so you can put NA if it is not applicable. You also need to provide the address of the organization where that organization is located. We'll also need to provide the organization's primary telephone number and primary email address. Moving on to Section B, information about the refugee applicants. So you want to provide information about both the accompanying and non-accompanying family members. And you can refer to the Guide for Sponsorship Agreement Holders to Privately Sponsor Refugees, which is IMM 5413, to understand the definition of family members. So who you will need to include as a refugee applicant on this particular undertaking. So you will need to include the information about the principal applicant here, their family name and given names, as well as their gender, date of birth, their place and country or territory of birth, their marital status, citizenship, and if they have dual citizenship, you would indicate the other citizenship as well. If you are only sponsoring a single individual who is unmarried, and if they don't have any children, then you would select no, you do not have additional family members to add. However, if this individual is married and or they have any children, you would select yes. When you do so, you will need to provide information about those additional family members. So for example, if they are married, then you will first indicate the information about their spouse. So include the spouse's family name, given name, their gender, date of birth, the place and country or territory of that spouse's birth, and then the spouse's marital status, their relationship to the principal applicant, their citizenship, and you will indicate whether they will accompany or not accompany the principal applicant to Canada. So this question generally means, will they intend to arrive in Canada at the same time and have their application processed at the same time as the principal applicant. If it's not possible because that spouse is located in a country where it makes it difficult for them to leave or be processed at the same time as the principal applicant, then they would likely select non-accompanying. And this means that they will have an opportunity at a later date to come to Canada, perhaps under the 1-year window of opportunity program. Now, when it comes to non-accompanying individuals, you do need to include those persons who are presumed missing or dead. And you also need to include any children of the principal applicant or the principal applicant's spouse, whether or not they live with those parents. Perhaps they are from a previous marriage. You would still need to include those children's information in this application. And the reason you need to include them is because
the Immigration and Refugee Protection Regulations
has a lifetime bar currently against bringing any dependents to Canada who were not named on the principal applicant's undertaking when they were sponsored to come to Canada. And so to ensure that those family members have every opportunity to join their parent in Canada at a later date or their spouse in Canada at a later date, you absolutely need to include them on this application. Now, if you have more than one dependent to be added to the application, you would select Add Additional Family Member. And now you can scroll down. After the spouse's information, you would include information about the dependent children as well. Scrolling down further, when you have multiple undertaking applications for a single family unit, where you have, for example, children who are married and have a separate undertaking, or perhaps a brother wants to be processed at the same time as his married brother, then you can link those applications together here as well. And if you need more than one application to be linked, then you would select Add Application. Now, under Section C, this is the information about the sponsorship undertaking. You would need to read through all of these to understand what you're agreeing to when you sign this undertaking to sponsor. In particular, you're declaring that the information provided is to the best of your knowledge, true, complete, and accurate, and that you're not in default of any other sponsorship undertakings or any immigration loans. And there's quite a bit of information to read. Make sure you understand everything that you are agreeing to and that you are consenting to. This section here, in particular, explains what the consequences are for not doing what you agreed to do. Now, under Section D, the settlement plan, because you are a SAW that is following Risk Management Plan A, you would need to check Plan A here. When you do so, you're going to get a warning here indicating that you must complete the separate settlement plan form. So it is the settlement plan form number IMM 5440. You do still need to complete a settlement plan. The difference is, as a SAW following Risk Management Plan A, you're not required to submit your settlement plan to IRCC unless they ask for it. But it still needs to be completed, but it's to be kept on file in the event that IRCC may request a copy of it at a future date. So when this dialog box pops up, you can select OK. You're acknowledging you understand that. And you can click on this link here to access and download that separate settlement plan form that you will need to complete. Now, for SAHs who are following Risk Management Plan B or C, when they check mark here, additional information will be required from them because they do have to submit their settlement plan with this undertaking form. So their settlement plan becomes part of this form. Whereas when you check Plan A, that additional information will not be displayed for you. You do not have to fill in that additional information in this form. So be sure that you check mark next to Plan A. Now for inserting signatures. So the signing authorities for those persons who are going to be parties to the sponsorship for this undertaking. You can digitally sign these forms now. And simply what that means is you will need to indicate the name of the signing authority, and then those individuals will need to type in their own name under the signature block for their signature to be valid, for them to agree that they are digitally signing this form. Now, you don't have to collect digital signatures. You can certainly have them sign in pen if that is your preference. In that case, once you've typed in the name information in this left column, you can then select to print the form. And when the form is printed, you can collect the pen signatures, and then you can simply scan the form and save it as the form that will be submitted to IRCC. The last section here, following the signatures, is for you to read so you understand how IRCC uses the information which is provided in this form.
When you are finished completing and signing this form, you're going to scroll to the top of the page until you can see the Print Form button. You'll click on that to save a PDF version of your form in a flattened version, which can no longer be edited. To do this, you're going to select from your printer options, Microsoft Print to PDF. Once you select that and click Print, you will have a PDF version that can no longer be edited.